So it looks like we're live. Thank you so much for joining us today, this evening, depending on where you are. Excuse me. I'm going to talk about fiber today. It's very interesting. If you go to Metamucil, it's, oh my gosh, here we go. If you go to Metamucil, it's one of the most common and most popular fibers out there. It claims that it can fix bloating. It fixes gas. It lowers your cholesterol. It lowers your blood sugar. It makes you less hungry. It helps you lose weight. It sounds like a cure for everything. Now, is that really true? Is it that good for you? People for a long time never questioned that it was. But now take a look. Take a look at the low carb community. Paul Mason, for example, he's pretty cut and dried, pretty clear that his view of the evidence is he's looked at the research, and the research shows that fiber is actually bad for you. You look at another content creator in that community, and with a focus on carnivores, even especially Ken Berry. Ken will say, no, it's bad for you. Stop eating fiber, especially if you're on a carnivore diet. Well, who's right and who's wrong? Like you get with so many of these YouTube debates, you really need to go back and look at the data, look at the evidence. One of the things you'll find when you look at the evidence is fiber's not just fiber. Most people think this is just one thing. It's that cellulose that comes from plants. There's actually soluble fiber, insoluble fiber. And as you'll see today, those are two very different things with very different perspectives. Somebody like another YouTube influencer, not very popular in the low carb community, probably should be more popular. Robert Lustig really focuses on the differences between those two fibers. And he sells a product called Munch Munch, which evidently didn't take off like he had hoped. And that product is just addition of fiber to your awful food, your ultra processed food. His perspective was, well, just add that to your cereal and it's going to make it a lot healthier. He doesn't think that's the best way to go, the most healthy way to go, but his perspective is at least trying to add some fiber back. That's what Miranda in our shop, Dr. Graham, does in terms of looking at this whole issue of carbohydrates and glycemic value. She says, actually, just a lot of people get confused about what glycemic value means. Why don't we just go back and add cellulose or fiber to the carbohydrates and look at the ratio between the two? So again, as you see, it gets more and more complicated as you get deeper into it. So Jesus has this dream that we're going to totally clean up and settle all the fiber questions today. Thank you for joining. And Jesus, you ready to try that?
Let me tell you something. We're not going to do that just coughing.
I'm so sorry. I'm my mother's son. I inherited a lot of inflammation in my upper respiratory tract. And
just at the beginning of the show. Yeah,
it's a great first impression for a show, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for whoever's watching the show for the first time, we start like that every time. Just some 2 minutes of coughing, and then we go to the information. That's
and by the way, this is a channel on how to stay healthy.
Can't you imagine? All right, so let's get to it because we know we have some people in the crowd that don't like our banter. They want to see information. So they want to know if they need to be eating Metamucil or not. The short answer is maybe. You need to know when to and when not to, right? What do you like to say? It depends.
Wait a minute. That's what you always tell me. Quit saying that. It depends.
Well, experience will give, like life will give you, you're right. Like, you're right. It always depends. I hate it, but right. it is what it is.
It is complicated, isn't it? And fiber is more complicated than Ken Berry or Paul Mason or Robert Lustig. I love all those guys to death. I think they are saving a ton of lives. But the bottom line is the truth is that fiber's a little bit more complicated than they present.
Yeah. So it depends on what your goal is. So let's start by defining fiber is just a carbohydrate, molecules of carbon and hydrogen that are in plants that our body cannot digest. That's the whole point. It goes through your intestines, doesn't get absorbed, and it's mostly to help your gut biome. And we're going to talk a lot about gut biome, which has been neglected by us on the channel. Not so much with our patients. We always discuss gut biome with our patients, but with the channel, we don't cover gut biome that much. So it's important to mention that. As Dr. Brewer mentioned, there are two types, soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. Key takeaways of soluble fiber. It's fiber that the gut bacteria can ferment, create some gas. They use that to transform glucose into short-chain fatty acids and other stuff. The three major ones that you're going to see are pectin, which you see on some fruits like apples, psyllium, which is what Metamucil has, and guar gum, and a bunch of others. But those are kind of the most popular one. Then insoluble fiber is the one that cannot be digested, cannot be fermented, so it just goes through your intestines. Examples include lignin, resistant starches, and cellulose. Two major points that can be used as a reference. Soluble fiber, usually it's better to grab water and keep that water on your large intestines. So your large intestines will be absorbing water. When you pull out a lot of water from your small intestine into your large intestine, that amount of water is going to make the stools more easy to pass. It might sound counterintuitive, but it also helps with diarrhea, mostly, the soluble fiber. Insoluble fiber is better for constipation. Some papers say that it can also pull water, but what it actually does, it kind of irritates the intestine wall and makes the intestine wall to put more water out. So it's not so much capturing water, but it's stimulating more water to go out. So it's more helpful for constipation, like in the broader sense. But the key takeaway, what Dr. Brewer said, okay, fiber, if you see the Metamucil box, fiber is to lower cholesterol, to improve your gut function, to lower your glucose. And you only get those last two benefits if you're eating viscous fibers. That is these examples that I have on the screen right now. Most popular ones, pectin and psyllium, right? So that's what the research says from what I have seen so far. Soluble fiber, insoluble fiber, different functions. Viscous fiber is the one that actually can decrease cholesterol, can actually decrease glucose, doesn't allow glucose to be absorbed. The bile acids that you put out to digest fat doesn't get reabsorbed when it's captured by these fibers. So it goes out on your stool and you get some greasy stools with it, which allows you not to reabsorb that much cholesterol. That's why it says that it helps with cholesterol. Care to clarify, Dr. Brewer, or just if that was clear enough or not?
I'm sitting there listening to you and thinking about patients and the reaction we often get. We go into some of these things with patients in terms of geekiness and sometimes way too much detail. So the question is, what do you do, Dr. Vega?
I personally don't eat that much fiber unless it's coming from vegetables. That's my source.
So,
but
you eat a lot of salads.
But I'm 34 though, so you have to take that into consideration.
You eat a lot of salads, right?
Yeah, and a lot of meat. So I do both, but that's just me.
So
I don't have a Metamucil box, and I'm going to talk about why I don't use Metamucil. I think you don't use it either, do you?
I have a few times, but I don't really use. I've never had problems with constipation.
Oh,
ever.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's what most people are looking for. I have in the past. I mean, except for a couple of episodes where I said, okay, I'm going to try a pure carnivore. When I also didn't have any problems with constipation. Usually I'm a big salad eater. I eat a ton of salad. And the other thing is I work out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually have been hesitant to use a lot of fiber because I'll have more than one stool per day, usually.
Yes, and
Always.
that can happen.
Yeah. And it's most, if I increase, and when I increase my my workout even more, I'll have even more frequent stool.
Well, and let me tell you something. If going back to the bloating thing, if a key component is, and this is my example, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of people will be familiar with this. If I ever misbehave on my diet and go back to eat some carbohydrates like tortillas, tamales, or whatever I have here, I'll get bloated. My gut biome right now, after doing low carb, the gut biome changes, so then it does not tolerate getting that much bad carbohydrates back. It's gonna get you gassy.
You get
So
bloated.
you get bloated. Well, that's my case. I don't know if you're more disciplined than I am. So
That's the truth.
all right. So let's go back to the research. Why to take fiber? So regardless of the type of fiber, this meta-analysis, well, it's actually an umbrella review. So it's a meta-analysis of meta-analysis, which it's tons of studies. It showed that there's a 24% less risk of heart attacks. Well, not less risk, less events, less heart attacks with fiber consumption, 17% less events of strokes. So that's one paper. Another paper showed, yes, as Dr. Brewer said, fiber will increase the frequency of your stools. It will increase the softness of your stools, which make it easy to pass. But it can also increase gas. My conclusion, or my theory here is that this is not people doing low carb diet. So whenever you're trying to change your gut biome, you're going to have that reaction of gas. I think it's temporary. It's something that you see with berberine or metformin, which also impact the gut biome. So when you're trying to adjust and change your gut biome for good, you're going to have that reaction at least for a couple of weeks. Then it goes away when you're able to change the healthy bacteria in your gut.
Let me interrupt and speak
Sure.
to something you just said, and I'll probably say it again because I think it's so important to say. You said this research was not done with specifically with people with low carb diet, and clearly not done specifically with people on carnivore diet.
Yes.
And it really wasn't. I don't think it was done on people with any other type of restrictive diet, like vegetarian diet or vegan diet. And so it's the carnivores, the people that are on restrictive diets, the carnivores, the keto community, the low carb community, the vegans, the vegetarians, the ones that really care about this are the ones that there's no information on. And that happens over and over and over again. It happens with medications like statins, like metformin. It happens in exercise studies and other types of lifestyle studies. The folks that really care about this information really have less information because the vast majority of the studies are done on people with a standard American diet.
If you're wondering what's the major cause of bloating and gas, that's the answer. It's the standard American diet. Just eating tons of junk food, processed and ultra processed foods. There's no amount of fiber that is going to fix that. That's important to mention. If you're eating the standard American diet and all that stuff, no, it's not going to work.
You cannot fiber away a diet.
Yeah, for sure. So, and a lot of our viewers are already beyond that point. But if you're not there, that's your step, your number one step. Stop eating junk food. You were talking about carnivores, and this study compared the gut biome from people on a vegan diet versus a population who were eating more meat than usual, 150 grams a day. Both had an increase on healthy bacteria. Those names over there, healthy bacteria. But the problem is the people on the meat-rich diet were not on a carnivore diet. This was not exclusive carnivore. They were eating other stuff. other sources of fiber. So it's hard to tell which was really which was more impactful. Another study, yeah, go ahead.
But to go back, so this may sound repetitive to you because I think I heard you say it, but I'm not sure that it was very clear. So you're saying people on a vegan diet had more coprococcus. People on a meat-rich diet, not carnivore, but meat-rich, had rosaburia and Faecalibacterium. And all of those are very good bacteria to have in your colon.
That's for sure.
So there is some evidence that either of these restrictive diets, vegan and meat-rich diet, are good for you.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, there's another study showing what happens when you eat animal products. What's the effect on the microbiome? So there are mixed results. Lactospiraceae, it's a bacteria that has both beneficial effects and negative effects, so it's controversial. Lactobacillus, bifidobacterium are both really healthy. Erysipelotrichia, that one, it seems that it helps with atopic dermatitis, but it has also been linked to colon cancer. And this one can be found in some eggs, which unfortunately they didn't distinguish between free-range chicken versus grain-fed or caged chicken. So it's hard to tell which eggs. But it's just to add to the complexity and the nuance behind the animal products and the gut biome. So
let me see if I can pronounce that. Erysipelotrichia.
Oh,
how do you like that?
Yeah, it's Spanish is way easier. So our friends Nick Norwitz and Adrian Soto published an article where they tested a carnivore ketogenic diet in 10 people with inflammatory bowel disease. That's your people with Crohn's disease and inflammatory bowel disease. So they saw that those 10 patients actually improved after doing ketogenic carnivore diet. The two main points they make is it was the lack of fiber and it was the ketones involved. So they're basically improving and cleaning up the gut biome. So there's evidence out there for that specific point if you're dealing with this specific disease.
For what specific point? For what specific disease?
Carnivore for inflammatory bowel disease.
Okay, so if you've got inflammatory bowel disease, it may help to decrease fiber.
At least based on this study, which is the first one ever. I don't think there's another paper like this one.
10 patients.
But it's only 10 patients.
So what would you take away from that in terms of a patient that comes in to see us that's on low carb and asking you the question, should I eat fiber?
If they're open and if the question is, I would like to try carnivore without fiber, I'll be okay with it. Like, let's test it.
Yeah. So for this study, what that tells me is, yeah, clearly if you have irritable bowel disease and you haven't tried no fiber, you haven't tried carnivore, clearly I would do that. There's no question about that.
Well, let me make an extension. Inflammatory, but not irritable. So
I'm sorry.
This is autoimmune gut disease.
I'm sorry. Exactly right.
Yes. I mean, not saying that it doesn't work for irritable bowel disease. Like there's a lot of cases of SIBO. Is that what you call it?
SIBO, yeah.
Overgrowth of bad bacteria, which is pretty much linked to a standard American diet. So eating junk food is going to take you there.
Yeah. I did what I often do, and it's the worst thing. People confuse irritable bowel syndrome with inflammatory bowel syndrome. They're both very, very different. I keep
They're
trying
different things. Yeah.
And the inflammatory one is really bad. You see inflammation within the wall of the intestine. And yet I turned around and confused it for everybody.
Yeah. Well, inflammatory bowel disease usually includes ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. So those two. Now, not saying that if somebody has IBS and they have tried everything, and I when I say everything, I mean everything, like stopping junk food first. Because you hear people say, oh, I have tried everything. I have tried Metamucil, I've tried psyllium, I tried this, I tried that. But they're still eating McDonald's and Burger King. So that's step number one.
Hey, Jesus, while I know we're not at Q&A yet, but there's a great question from a member, David C. Black. about this issue.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
How does inflammatory bowel syndrome relate to ulcerative colitis?
Ulcerative colitis is one type of inflammatory bowel disease. And this is what they research in these 10 patients. Some of them had UC, some of them had Crohn's disease.
Bottom line is there's something, we talk about cardiovascular inflammation being a case of our arteries taking friendly fire. Our own immune system is attacking the lining of our arteries. And we also talk about some inflammatory diseases have some crossover effect, where with some inflammatory diseases, you get major increase in risk for heart attack and stroke, as well as just the typical one, which is due to carb intolerance, prediabetes, diabetes. So the ones that are known that really cause increased crossover, where you have inflammation, rheumatoid arthritis and psoriatic arthritis. Not so much with the inflammatory bowel diseases. You don't get that crossover where you get great increase in cardiovascular disease risk with those inflammatory diseases. You do with those arthritides, or arthritides, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, ulcerative colitis, inflammatory bowel disease. Those don't show that kind of crossover causing heart attack and stroke risk. Just a clarification.
Wonderful. So next, one thing that we really wanted to cover. So if you are saying, okay, a restrictive diet is not for me, I do want to eat some carbohydrates here and there. All right, that's an option. What we like you to think about whenever you're trying carbohydrates is this specific point. Most natural carbohydrates will have pectin or some type of viscous soluble fiber. So there's one thing called the carbohydrate to fiber ratio. So whatever you're gonna eat that has carbs on it, just Google amounts of carbs, amounts of fiber on this specific food in grams, and you divide the amount of grams in carbs, divide that by the fiber. The optimal will be 5 or less, but 7 or less is fine. And I have some examples for you to see that, like your wonderful mac and cheese, 49 grams divided by 2.7 grams of fiber. That's a ratio of 18. So the problem here is a lot of carbs, not so much fiber, to decrease the speed on which those carbs are being absorbed.
So let me clarify. In other words, with a carb to fiber ratio of 18, mac and cheese is really bad for you. It's just bad. It's one of the things we would call an ultra-processed carb.
Yep.
Sugar on steroids will raise your blood sugar and kill you.
That's correct. Now, Cheerios, the heart-healthy Cheerios, they have 20 grams divided by 4 grams of fiber. So above the 7 points, we say it's not that bad. The problem is also the processing and other stuff that it has on there. So it's not only the glucose, also the other chemicals on it that will probably cause inflammation. So keep that in mind.
So Cheerios are healthy for your heart?
I'll say no, definitely not.
Well, why does it have a big heart on there? And why does it say lowered cholesterol?
Well, when you are able to support a foundation like the American Heart Association with enough money, they will give you that, of course, with some evidence on it. And it's based on this, like it's based on fiber. It's based on the thing of, oh, this thing has fiber. It will reduce the amount of cholesterol that's being reabsorbed. Therefore, no cholesterol, no heart disease. That's the whole idea. But doesn't really meet that criteria either.
One other thing. So we did a video called "The Number One Worst Meal," saying that it killed more people than any other meal, and we listed Cheerios as one of them. Why not? Why not mac and cheese?
Well, I would say more people eat cereal than people eating mac and cheese.
That's exactly the point. For folks that are confused about that, the problem is you may have 5 to 10 to 15 to 20 different things that you eat on a routine basis for lunch, and especially dinner. You have a lot more variety. People just don't have as much variety on breakfast, and there have been billions and billions of bowls of cereal eaten for breakfast.
Yep. And I wanted to include one that I didn't want to include ice cream, not to throw you under the bus. I included my own version of ice cream, which is popcorn. I can binge on popcorn. And you can see popcorn seems to be not that bad, but the problem is also the processing. So you're having the flavored popcorn that has other stuff in it, a lot of omega-6s, not a good idea. But just regular popcorn, if you find something that is only some carbs and fiber, not that bad.
Well, to your point, there are forms of popcorn that really aren't that bad, and if that's your version of a cheat, or your version of a vacation from a low carb diet, that's not too bad. On my side, and I think that message needs to get out, because we've been open and clear about neither one of us are, except when we're doing experiments, neither one of us are one of those patients. We have plenty of patients that are just very, very strict about their diet. And that's fine. That works for a lot of people. It doesn't for most. Most people like to have a little bit of a splurge or a vacation or a cheat, especially during things like holidays.
Oh, yeah.
And the point is, you and I have both been very open about popcorn is your poison, your kryptonite, and ice cream is mine. On my side with the ice cream, what I eat is ice cream that's been sweetened with stevia.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's really very few carbs in that. And I know Ken Berry and other folks will say, just don't eat, quote, carb friendly foods. There's a lot of clarity behind that. And that's a good way to go, especially for a lot of people. Yes. It's not for everybody.
And we have talked about sweeteners before. And I think overall, we are okay with a lot of them. Of course, we know that there are pros and cons. A lot of people don't like to take aspartame, for example, and that's absolutely fine. If you prefer stevia or allulose may be better options. Still good oats, because whenever you say don't eat cereal, you always get the question, what about oats? Well, still good oats, 5.8, 25 grams of carbs on 5 grams of fiber. Blueberries, 21/4, 20 grams of carbs and 4 grams of fiber, that's 5.25. And of course, if you put any meat and most dairy products, pecorino romano, 1 gram of carb, 0 fiber. But that's the point. Do you really need fiber?
No, not for that.
Exactly. So it depends on your own perspective. Like, are you dealing with bloating and gas? I'll probably first fix my diet and then see if fiber can help me out. I think most of the benefit with fiber, and maybe to the carnivore people point, is on people who are actually eating absolutely horrendously in a really bad way, understand their American diet.
You're going to get irritated with me for pulling these up, but this is another good question about.
It's a good question.
Is diverticulitis considered an inflammatory bowel disease? No, it is not. The problem, I mean, yes, you get inflammation with diverticulitis. There's no question. It's not considered a classic inflammatory disease, because here's what's going on with inflammatory bowel disease. It is a mechanical, structural problem. You get a diverticulum, a little bubble coming off of the wall of the bowel, similar to an aneurysm, a bubble coming off the wall of the artery. You get infection in there, and the immune system it gets geared up. You do get inflammation, but it's all attacking an appropriate thing. It's attacking bacteria, an invader in the body. With inflammatory bowel disease, your immune system is attacking part of your bowel. It's attacking yourself. Your bowel wall is taking friendly fire from your own inflammatory system, your own immune system.
All right. I'm going to pull this one out just because you're doing that stuff. Who eats Romano cheese without pasta? Dr.
Me,
Brewer.
me, all the time. So it brings up a question, a whole different bunny hole. This thing about, is it C10 or C15? It's C10, isn't it?
C15.
C15. Well, there goes the statins again. So C15, there's a great story. If you, obviously by definition, most of you looking and watching do watch other programs. And there's several programs. One of them was Diary of a CEO, which told the story about an animal epidemiologist. She got called by the Navy. The Navy said, we're having problems with our dolphins. I never knew even that dolphins were used by the Navy, but dolphins can get, around and near radar, and they just don't get picked up. So they train dolphins, and dolphins can do things like find underwater sea mines and a bunch of other stuff. But the dolphins were having a problem. The epidemiologist came in, and she found out, the story was, she found out that it was due to C15, or lack of C15. And C15 is it's a saturated fat. So away we go. Now C15 is a supplement, and a very, very expensive one. And it's called what? Fatty what? Do you remember?
15.
Fatty 15, exactly right. Now, when you get to the data, and our friend Nick, the other Nick
Verhoeven.
Yes, Nick Verhoeven's done a good analysis of that, the data, the real evidence behind that story. And the evidence is not so good as the story.
Yep.
Don't you hate that?
From Physionic.
Yep. Don't you hate that? That happens all the time.
Yep. So, and just to go back to the point, this is what we look for. Like leafy green vegetables, we have a lot of insoluble fiber, some soluble fiber. We know some oats, like you see here, will have a lot of soluble fiber, and you will benefit from both. So when you're not eating junk food, you need to eat something, and if you're including vegetables or some sources like that, even some legumes might have some positive fiber. Not saying that you should not eat meat. Like, I think that's Dr. Brewer's perspective and mine. We are both omnivores. We're not vegan. We're not necessarily carnivore. We get the benefits from both sides. So whenever you go ahead and go to the store and want to buy a Metamucil, look at the label. I don't know if it's big enough for you to see. Not just the total sugars or the added sugars. Thank you, Dr. Brewer. I think that's fantastic.
What's that?
Right there. That's good. So we can see your reaction on it. Total sugar, 16 grams. Added sugars, 16 grams. So a lot of sugar on this one.
Oh my gosh.
It has sucrose. It does have psyllium, but it has natural and artificial flavor and some coloring over there.
I had no idea.
So
I've never used Metamucil. I always check. I'm a very aggressive label and content checker, and I've never seen one of these fiber things. My mom uses fiber. I can't remember the name of it, and I've used that a few times just to see if it caused gas, and it didn't for me anyway. And but I never saw this many added sugars in a fiber. That's Metamucil?
That's Metamucil, the standard Metamucil, natural, real sugar, orange flavor. And now,
wow.
But there's a sugar-free version, and that one only has 5 grams of soluble fiber, 1 gram of insoluble fiber. But see here, psyllium husk, maltodextrin, which we need to do a video about that. Natural and artificial flavors, aspartame and colorant yellow 6. So look at the labels. Like that's why Dr. Brewer and I prefer to take our fiber get our fiber from natural sources. There are other options. Like if you want to buy psyllium husk, just take a look at the label. And the next thing is, even with the carbohydrate to fiber ratio, which is a good reference, check your glucose after you eat this stuff. That's the key. Just check your glucose. Check your glucose, and you will find out if you can actually process that despite the amount of fiber that it has on it. So
You waiting for my reaction?
Yeah. Well, what's
Okay.
what's the verdict at the end? Fiber, yay or nay?
So it depends.
Well, we should call this the It Depends show.
That's a good idea. We should change the title. It depends. So a couple of things. Number one, things are a lot more complicated when you start dealing with the real evidence. Things are often far more complicated than you hear on shows. And again, even folks that we know that I'm big fans of, and I think are saving a lot of lives, often take a lot of liberty with their interpretations. And that was one of my reasons for starting this whole show anyway, that there's just not a lot of great epidemiologists on YouTube.
Well,
and so
and we're not the best either. But one thing that I have found is
we're better than most on YouTube.
Oh, that's for sure. Well, at least we're more critical, and we can give you a pros and cons, which I know for some people is frustrating, but that's the way it is. What works for you might not work for another person. So
life and biology are complicated, and medicine are complicated. So you do have to study, you have to learn the facts. And yes, I do think we're some of the best epidemiologists on YouTube, but that's a very, very low bar.
Low bar.
Yes.
Well, and clearly we're not the best communicators.
What?
You spend the whole stream coughing. I can't speak English. We're not the best communicators. But one thing that I have found, and I want you to know that as well, whenever you see an article, pages like Healthline or WebMD or whatever, one thing that I have seen more and more common, but more frequently on the last few weeks, you see guys stating something. Oh, fiber reduces blood sugar. And then they put a link to a paper. And you think, oh, this is evidence-based.
Yeah.
You click the link. Turns out nowhere there the article says exactly what they're saying. Like the conclusions are not that. So you have to be really careful what you see and read online. That's why we try to put all of our references on the description of the video. I don't think I have put them yet, but I'll put them there. So if you want to go watch the evidence and tell us, hey guys, you're wrong, go for it. Like we want to make sure that we get the right information.
To that point, Nathan, look at Jesus make an ugly face. So
that's my face.
So Nathan,
I cannot make it any uglier.
Nathan came on, a fellow named Nathan came on and did a lot of work with us in terms of helping. He helped us a lot, change our studios, improve a lot of the things about our quality. He was also a good writer. However, and a great writer for YouTube. But I remember he used to say, Doc, he called me Doc, and he said, you talk smack about every article that I bring up. I'm not talking smack. It's Nathan was like your typical doctor, your typical nurse, your typical YouTube content creator, where they see an article and they throw it up on the video and they say, there. This proves something outlandish. And that article didn't prove that at all. It's not that I'm talking smack. It's just that I'm trying to be a little bit more of a voice of reality.
Yep. And I know it's frustrating if I was going to say something. I'm going to hold it. I don't want to get us demonetized. But if you just want to know the easy fix and the magical solutions and get gaslighted, I'm sorry, this is not your channel.
Yeah.
Okay, so want to go to Q&A?
You've got a tolerance for it depends. Maybe this is your channel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you can say, okay, these guys are telling me pros and cons, I need to make my own decisions. This is your channel.
Yeah, that's right.
What's the name of that cartoon before we go to Q&A? That cartoon of the horse, the white horse, and the
Quick Draw McGraw and Bubba Louie.
Yeah, this is your channel if you like that.
Quick Draw. In case you haven't seen it, now most of my peers, boomers, especially in the U.S., may have seen this when they were younger. Quick Draw McGraw was like slow and not so smart, but he was the leader of the group, and he had this alter ego called El Kabong, and El Kabong was even dumber than him. And then he had this very smart Mexican. Should I say Mexican ass or Mexican donkey?
I don't know what it is. Is it a donkey?
Yes, Bubba
Oh,
Louie.
that fits the description perfectly.
Okay, time for Q&A.
I don't think.
Hey,
Just
sis,
a-
we've
just a
got
quick-
3 new members today.
Yes. Oh, we're getting some feedback on your end. Okay.
Really?
Yeah, we're good now. So, Lane Carey, thank you so much for becoming a member. Doug Grumman,
Groman?
and Viviana Matthew James. So Gilbert,
you
if
so
you wanna put there how to become a member, remember, if you're a YouTube member, we will answer your questions first on the chat. We also have exclusive YouTube live exclusive videos for you every Wednesday. We go through the questions of premium members, and we got those answers available for everybody. Oh, look at that banner! Nobody can see that, Gilbert. See if we can find a bigger one. So yesterday we covered cayenne pepper. You want to if you might want to look at that video we did yesterday. Brad, Doc turned 65 in June. Glucose went up to chronically over 100 to 130 on the CGM. Occasionally spiked to 150. All lifestyle changes are in effect, plus metformin. What else can I do to lower my glucose?
What's my favorite response? It depends. It depends on actually what's going on. You say that your glucose was going over to that level. What is your diet? How many carbs are you eating? Glycemic carbs. You know, you and I talked a couple of times. One of the things that we did today, we wanted to cover this ratio of carbs to fiber, because you'll hear that mostly with Miranda's dietary coaching sessions. Usually with me, you'll hear glycemic carbs, because I'm making an assumption that you know what glycemic carbs are. And it's not likely at all that you're on a carnivore diet. You may be, and you may be getting those kind of numbers from maybe a cortisol or another response. If you are, then again, you really need to dig a lot deeper. So I need to understand a lot more about your specific metabolism than just what you've given me here. Sorry.
Some people are eating stealth carbs, like
that's
I heard that from you, like carbs that are in there, they're not necessarily seen as a bad thing, or you still have a lot of reserves or glucose storage in your liver.
Yeah, glycogen reserves in your liver. That's another potential thing. And when you say that on the CGM, the question is, when you do is your full week average 100 to 130, or are you just hitting those kind of numbers over 100 in the morning?
Yeah.
Or after you eat, you raise a ton of questions.
Yeah. I'll also see the calibration of the CGM, just compare a CGM reading with the glucose finger stick, knowing that there's 15 to 20 minutes effect where your CGM might not be as the same number as your glucose. So what you need to do is check your glucose with a finger stick, check your CGM, and 20 minutes later, check your CGM again. And see if there's a lot of difference between the CGM reading versus your finger stick reading. Because we have seen CGMs that's just how the sensor comes. They are not giving the best measurements. So you might think it's 100 and might be actually 90 or 85 or 95. And those 5 points might be a difference for any anxiety issues that you may be dealing with.
So one thing that we're hearing, Brad, is, when we say that depends, we don't have nearly enough information. It's like, first assess the situation. And what you've given us really is not enough for us to understand exactly what the situation is.
Kid Lawson, good morning. Brad again. And well, it's hard for us to provide it's impossible for us to provide medical advice. We just try to give you like the direction of what we usually recommend. But as Dr. Brewer said, there are a lot of moving pieces. Doug, been with the channel since 2019. Recent CIMT indicates 75-year-old arteries. Early event risk 1.1, IMT 0.88, less than 1 millimeter. 0.98 on the maximum region, but the plaque burden shows as none. How you interpret it? So it's hard to make an interpretation on YouTube. What we can say, I think, is depending on who you ask, they will classify significant plaque as anything above 1 millimeter or 1.3 millimeters. So if you're not having that in any place on your carotids, they're not finding plaque. Doesn't mean that you don't have it on your heart, though. There is a small chance that you have plaque in your heart anyway, but at least they didn't seem to be finding anything.
So I'm at an average IMT. Do you know what an average IMT of 0.88 means, Jesus, in terms of
the average IMT? Yeah, that's the measurement between the intima and the media on average. So there might be places where it's bigger, there may be places where it's smaller.
Yes, I understand that, but that's not the question. The question, what does it mean at 0.88? Or it means an arterial age of 73.
Oh, okay. So most people at 70, most people at 75-year-old will have that amount of IMT. That's what you're trying to say.
Did you know that it was an arterial age of 73?
It says, oh, so you're saying that 0.88 is 73 because he says that he reported 75.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Anyhow, at 0.88 was mine when I was listed as 73 years old.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's how I remembered that. I thought I was going to try to impress you. Bottom line, so
you just confused me as usual.
Well, anyway, it's just another tribute to my communication skills. So the bottom line is, Brad, I'm seeing what you've got there, and it looks like most of your things are either arterial age, average max region, mean max, all of these things number one, it sounds like you got it from cardiac risk. And number two, it sounds like that's from that little section in the middle. The first section is arterial age, and then the second section is a spreadsheet looking thing with a bunch of things, and you'll see things like overall plaque burden, what is it, event risk, all of those things, early event risk, and all of those things you really need to slow down and reinterpret. I've asked Todd to actually take those off for our folks. I understand he's not going to, and I understand why, but I've reviewed every one of those variables that you're talking about there. They're not the greatest. They were done for using things like the Cafe de Caves study, which are real. You know, we talked about that a couple of times, 10,000 patients. But here's the problem, and here's the reason Cafe de Caves probably does not apply to you. With Cafe de Caves, they took these studies and they didn't tell the patients anything. So the patients did not change their cardiovascular risk profile, their lifestyle. So yes, the things that you're seeing there, early event risk, average, mean, max, those things do, quote, confer risk, but that's risk you can take off the table. Now, on a practical basis, you need to go back and look just at, do you have plaque? And it sounds like you do. Most of us do by the time we're 75. And most of all, is that plaque soft or is it heterogeneous? Is it stable or not?
Yes, absolutely. So, and you can just search on YouTube, Dr. Brewer, CIMT. You will find a bunch of videos. Dr. Brewer has explained that in other videos that might be helpful. Richard Militello, good morning. Good morning. Any thoughts on Munch Munch? So you got Munch Munch. What do you think? What's your overall reaction after trying it?
I got it. I got prior pre-marketing signed up for it and got it, and I didn't like it. I tried to give it away to some friends. well, the problem was, it was flavored. And so I wouldn't mind adding a flavorless version of Munch Munch to my food because it really didn't change the consistency that much. I tried adding it to a drink. I didn't like that. It was flavored like some sort of berry flavor, artificial berry flavor, and it was just awful. And I couldn't get any of my friends to take it either. So I still have some. If you want, I'll bring it to the DR.
Sounds good. No, just to try it. I want to see what's in the box. Like for somebody so mindful about processed foods as Dr. Lustig, I'll be curious to see what's in that thing.
It's just little packets of a powder.
Yeah. All right. So Joey T, this is a very interesting question. Since I changed my lifestyle of cutting out sugar and processed foods, I'm always constipated and went from pooping once a day to about twice a week. Eating a lot of fiber doesn't help much. What can I do? Digestive enzymes, probiotics, and Miralax. Before you answer, and to give you some time to answer, there are different definitions of constipation. So yes, it has to do with how regularly you go to the bathroom, which it should be at least 3 to 4 times a week. That will at least to go and poop. But it also is the consistency. So you can be going to the bathroom a lot of times, but if the consistency is not the right one, and it's just too hard, it's constipation. It doesn't matter if you go multiple times. One key factor was not discussed here, might not be the problem. It's water. And this kind of I think it's popular knowledge, I hope, that whenever you're trying to take fiber, you need to take a lot of water. Because if you're not hydrated, that water needs to come from somewhere. And as much fiber that you can take, if there's not enough water for that fiber to capture or push into the intestine lumen, it's not going to work. But what do you think, Dr. Brewer?
So I'm glad you went ahead and answered, because that is a good point. The first question is that defined as a constipation, or would you consider that? Maybe if he's uncomfortable, that that would
there's bloating or pain, yeah,
right,
or hard stools.
But is it unhealthy to have stools twice a week? No, not that. If that's the only thing, no, it's not unhealthy. The other thing I have is, again, a bunch of questions. How much are you working out? What kind of workout do you do? Are you doing HIIT? How often? What level of HIIT? Are you doing resistance training? How often? What kind of resistance training? Are you doing squats? Are you doing lower body HIIT? There's just a lot of questions there.
And it seems that there was some medication, metoprolol, that probably was associated. I have heard of diarrhea associated to metoprolol, not so much constipation. I'll have to take a look at it, because if it's metoprolol, it's not a common side effect.
It's not common with metoprolol, but I can see how that would happen.
Yeah. A while ago, I bought Metamucil, but saw aspartame on it. Bought some psyllium husk, 500 milligrams capsules when I was constipated, but have not yet been taken. Good to take it every day.
It was about from about 15 years ago to about 10 years ago, I took fiber regularly, and it was psyllium husk that I bought on Amazon.
Yeah. So it seems like he's connecting the dots with the metoprolol. So whenever we have patients like that, you don't like metoprolol. Want to go on a small rant about why you don't like metoprolol?
It won't be a small rant. I'll be uncharacteristically succinct and concise. Metoprolol and most of the beta blockers can push you into more insulin resistance, prediabetes, or even diabetes. So try to avoid it. If you have, so much for being concise.
Well, I think the point that you were going to make is important. Like, talk to your provider, talk to your doctor. Hey, is there an alternative to metoprolol? And now you have the constipation plus the insulin resistance to think about changing medication.
So some people are still on beta blockers for high blood pressure alone. Beta blockers are not good for high blood pressure. You need to be on something else. Number two, some people are on beta blockers for heart failure or having had a stent or a procedure. Those do make sense. And I would not say try to get off the beta blocker until an appropriate time, 6 to 18 months. I would say, though, that there are beta blockers that are less invasive or that have less of the adverse side effect.
Yep.
Carvedilol.
Absolutely. Shout out to, just let me go back here. Shout out to Candence Hoagie. Thank you so much for becoming a member. It really goes a long way with the team.
I suspect that's pronounced Candace Hogue.
Okay, sorry. Candence Hogue. Okay. So if you like your name to be mispronounced, this is your channel. Let me see. I saw one other comment over here that I wanted to address real quick. I passed it by. Okay, here. So we mentioned ulcerative colitis. We mentioned that, and somebody said we're the slowest channel.
Well, the slowest channel. You know, that I'll take the blame for that. I grew up in a family that talked really slow.
Yeah, I think this is just a troll escalator face. Like, come on, get a life.
But there's clear and simple countermeasures for that. Wait until it's already been posted, then go in and put it on 2x.
Yeah,
I do that all the time.
You know, there's a problem though with that, because when you're alone that works, but when I'm with you, I just speak too fast. so they have to go 2x and then 0.5, then 2x and 0.5. Yeah. Anyhow, RJNJ, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Jesus, you want to make a comment? And I saw somebody wanting to hear this in Spanish.
Oh, yeah.
I know that's been a challenge for you, because we're getting a lot of Spanish-speaking viewers now.
I don't think that person is gonna be here anymore. But if somebody of you talks Spanish, we're only able to translate Spanish for long-form videos on Saturdays and shorts on Tuesdays. It's just the way it is right now. We're sorry. Live shows are gonna be in English. Así que, pues, una disculpa a todos ustedes que solo hablan español. So sorry.
So, Jesus, can I take a couple of non-member comments?
Just let me give this one and let you do that. RJNJ, my understanding of all things that apply to me grows consistently. Thanks to you both and everyone also behind the scenes. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So, thank you so much.
Yep. See here. The slow and steady wins the race. Thank you so much.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So, yeah, go ahead. I think that's going to be the last question you answer. So go ahead.
Okay. So real quick, Matthew says, when I want to go down bunny holes, this is the channel I go to.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That sounds like the commercial. When I drink beer, I drink whatever that was, Dos Equis or something. And specifically, we're the slow bunny hole channel.
Yep.
Mountain Grandma, can you talk about why nitrates?
I'm sorry, I took it out.
Can you talk about why nitrates and things like hot dogs are bad for you? Because they cause things like nitrosamines and nitrosamine. So when the nitrate binds to an amine, which is amines are proteins. Proteins are made of amino groups. Nitrosamine, when meats are burned in an area or cooked in an area where nitrates are, or nitrites even more so, more specifically, you can get a thing called nitrosamines, and that's a known carcinogen. The question is, how bad is it compared to, something like diabetes? I'll take the nitrosamine any day of the week.
All right. Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. I think Dr. Brewer is going to have me working on the 26th. So we'll see you next week anyway.
Muy bien.
Okay. Well, that's the show, guys. Thank you so much. See you next week.
Thank you.